What's up, everybody? Um, so today we'll be talking about open source. So let's get going. So a little bit about me. So my name's Nick. I'm a self-taught developer, and I'm from Springfield, Mo. Kind of came into the industry in a kind of weird way. College dropout, just was really big, during the MySpace days, making profiles and all that, then going to Tumblr and then all that. So that's kind of where I got my start in the front end world. So I guess I've been programming seriously for about a year and a half. So still new in the industry. I'm a young buck. My background was in marketing, and I wanted to have an edge on the competition. That's kind of how I got into coding, because I like SMS marketing a lot, and a lot of times I really wanted to use the Twilio. Like their GUI, it really wasn't that good. You had to do everything through an API, whether it be through Python or Node, and that was just one of those things. And I like email blasts, and I just didn't like any templates. A lot of them weren't responsive, so I just wanted to make them myself. So kind of back then, that's my main goal, was to I guess, take my marketing to the next level. And then now I've kind of just come accustomed to, your normal, I guess, software engineering practices. So I'm a big fan of web accessibility. I like API design, and I like microservices. I think those are super fun. My main programming language I use is Go, so I'm a gopher. I don't really say fumped. I say format. That's kind of a weird thing in the Go world, but that's just how I do it. And outside of code, I like skateboard. I go to concert shows, mountain biking, I like coffee, and I like tennis a lot. So here's some links you can find me at. So GitHub's NEL417 Arena. It's it's not kind of like Pinterest. It's just like a research mood board app. And then I have my blog. I'm not so fun on code forces. I'm trying to get into competitive programming. So if any C++ people out there are trying to show me a thing or two, add me on that, and my email's below. So kind of how I got into open source. So I had a really cool first internship, and it was just pretty awesome. I was working on some pretty high volume projects for like Starbucks, Procter & Gamble, things like that. And kind of after that, side projects, it wasn't really the same, just because I just liked working in cross-functional teams. I liked soaking up info from other people. I really liked all the senior developers, the staff, the principals, all those people just out there. I like working in sprints. I do enjoy doing stand-ups, those kind of things. I'm a very social person. And then after that, I got my first full-time job, and the projects really weren't too good. Didn't really align with it, whether it be like, not even politically. It was just like, oh wow, these are just like kind of boring projects. It kind of took a toll on me mentally, and I needed a way to sharpen my skills, and I wanted to leave my footprint in the tech world. So like I would literally get off of work and I would like do leet code for like 6 hours, just because I was just like, man, like I just need to code, but like I just need out. And then a close friend of mine, he said you should just make your own experience by doing some open source, and then that's kind of how it all started. So some of my contributions are, I'm a contributor to Node.js.org. I've done a little bit of front end stuff. Arena, it's that like research and mood board app I was talking about earlier. And I'm not pull requests, but I'm in a few communities for the Golang documentation, Hugo, and Square open source, just for like kind of doing some black box testing and kind of just being like, oh hey, X doesn't work, try Y, or just like, hey, I've tried these, I can confirm it doesn't work on X browser with X operating system. So why you should get into open source? So first, like, it's fun. I like it because, you can choose your own projects. So, if like your work projects are just kind of boring, or if it's a little too corp for you, then you just have so many projects online that you can just choose from in your language, or you can just, learn a new language and just try and learn it through open source. A lot of times, even if your pull requests don't go through, it's like you're still getting practice, and you're still getting that instant feedback from like code reviews, or just from somebody in your community. You have a lot of community engagement, so a lot of times, you'll be in your community, you'll be on GitHub. A lot of the communities, they will have like Discords, they'll have Slacks, and a lot of the times you can just go in there, ask for help, being like, oh hey, like I have no idea what I'm doing, what should I do? Hey, do you have anything I should do? Is there anything outside of the issues tab that needs to be done? Like, what's good for somebody of my level? Like, can you give me a hand? And a lot of the times people are super down to help you. It's definitely a lot different from like a Stack Overflow community, or like some of the people on Reddit, just because it's just like that. And that's kind of how I got into really getting into open source. It's just meeting a lot of friends, connects, stuff like that. You're giving back, especially for like a lot of the especially for a lot of like smaller builds, smaller frameworks, smaller things, just because a lot of times it's just one person, there's just one maintainer, and a lot of times your help is really just like taking a load off of their back, because a lot of these people, it's a labor of love, and a lot of the times they're like, they have full-time jobs, they have families, they have stuff like that, but there's some things that are just so small but so big, like, oh hey, we're using this in production, like why does this not work, blah blah blah. But then you just have like this one-man team who has a full life, just not being able to live their life. So it's just super cool that you're able to give back and help out maintainers, help out contributors, and be a part of a community. So you learn a lot. That's my big thing, because I think I'm not really a big fan of side projects. Like, I still do them. Like, I have one, and I still have one on like a resume just to like show like, hey, this is my skills. But a lot of times when you do open source, you're just gonna be like kicked into a pit of fire, because there's like, especially when you're working on bigger repos, like if you're doing something for like, say you're working on something for like React's open source. You do something for React Native, just anything high caliber. There's just so many developers. There's just like, a lot of times you have to like test before you push. You have to learn how to read other people's code. A lot of times the code isn't commented. You have to learn just like communication. A lot of times, if the world's working on it, say like a top maintainer is from like Europe, so you have like a 7-hour time difference. So you kind of have to learn how to, finagle that and try to, get the info you need. You have to kind of get through and get their knowledge while trying to, be on your time schedule. Oops. Oh no. Where are we at here? Here we go. And then the last reason is to build a portfolio and get referrals. So a lot of times if you're like a top maintainer or a top contributor on a repo, and people are like, oh, hey, this guy's doing a lot, then that could lead into full-time positions. Or a lot of times if you're on like their communities like Discord or Slack, then a lot of times you'll be able to, they might have job boards, or like somebody like one of the top maintainers or like an admin can refer you, stuff like that. Or honestly, just getting referrals, just like, oh, hey, like, you guys hiring, or just the people. And you can build your portfolio. Depending on the company, I know a lot of companies are just like, I'll have like this really cool like side project. It's like, oh, it's like hosted on AWS, hits an API, does this. I write tests for it, blah, blah, blah. But then they're just like, oh, yeah, who cares? Tell me about this project. And it's an open source project where I just changed like 3 lines of code. So it's a super interesting thing, because people, they enjoy it when you are just kind of consumed in a community and you're, giving back and just working on software that's just at large scale. So those are a few reasons why I think people should be getting into open source. And kind of going on, I'm just think about what you're good at, and then from there kind of take over that, because a lot of people think open source is just like, oh, hey, bug fixes, or like, oh, hey, I need to build a full feature, but it's a little bit more than that. So like stuff that I've learned was just like, communication. Like I talk to people in Norway, because I think that's where one of the static site generator that I kind of implement some like a little bit of black box testing on, that's where they're from. Definitely, accessibility. So like ARIA labeling, tab order, screen readers, black box testing. So that's just like testing without the code. So you're the user in mind. Definitely Git, just because, you have to, fork code, you got to push it, make feature branches, stuff like that. Technical writing, definitely fixing up some docs, fixing readmes, stuff like that. Reading other people's code and testing code and linter restrictions and style guides. So a lot of people, they just use like stock ESLint on VS Code or whatever the normal, I guess, adherence is to just style guides. But whenever you kind of get into a bigger project, people are going to have some pretty strict style guides. Like, they're going to want to have like your first, your lines have to match up with the first bracket, or no bottom, or like no trailing commas, or oh, hey, like there can't be white space at the bottom of the page. So definitely lots of stuff you can learn from doing open source. So this talk, we will be going over ways you can contribute to open source, whether it's like contributing code and getting PRs, or kind of just replicating a problem, a little bit of black box testing. And there's many ways you can get in and help the community. The only prerequisites I would really say is just Git and GitHub. And even if you're not really too sure with that, if the project's honestly small enough, there's no testing, no builds, you can honestly just fork it over to your GitHub, and then honestly you can just edit the raw HTML, if it's like a little typo, or just adding in a few labels and stuff like that. So, what is open source? So, open source software, it's a type of computer software in which the source code is released under a license in which the copyright holder grants users the rights to use, study, change, and distribute the software to anyone and for any purpose. So, here's a few companies that have open source. So, you have like Alibaba, you have Facebook, Airbnb, Twitter, Google, Square, and Microsoft. I know, you have like React and React Native for Facebook, and Airbnb has Lottie, and there's just a lot of stuff that you could be working on. So let's begin. So moving forward, I want to just kind of focus that I would kind of focus working on kind of mid to large projects or even smaller projects. The only thing I would have to say with a smaller project, say like if you're going to like somebody like me, like if you just go to like a random person's like GitHub, I would kind of go and see and make sure that they have like a contributing thing in their README, like pull requests are welcome for major changes. Please open an issue to discuss what you would like to change right here. So I would just do that just because, sometimes getting like unsolicited, PRs just from like some weird things might rub people the wrong way, but definitely, if it's like definitely bigger, mid-level, those kind of repos, and like even smaller repos that are like that, if there's like a contributing thing on smaller repos, then I would probably hop in. But if you're just going to like Billy Bob's like GitHub and you're gonna fix his typos, then maybe ask first. But everything else, it's fair game. So this is about how to find projects. So think about what you're good at. So even outside of code, it doesn't, you don't have to, like I said, it's not like implementing crazy features or just like fixing bugs, stuff like that. So if you're good at, search engine optimization, accessibility, front end, copywriting, documentation, etc., pretty much anything is out there, and people will always appreciate your help for contributing. And then also think about what technologies you use, whether you use like Node, React, Go, PHP, etc. So whatever you're using, think about what you use and what technologies you're strongest with, and then find an issue and hop on it. So this is one of my favorite backend frameworks. It's called GoFiber. It's kind of like, it's called like, it's Express inspired. So for all the Node people out there, it's kind of like an Express inspired Go framework for the backend, and the benchmarks are pretty insane. It's pretty cool. But as you can see right here, we have your little issues right there. There's one issue. Take a peep at it. If it's something in your control, be like, hey, down to take this, and then try to work it out. And we're also going to talk about how to, like, I guess, build your own issues, like, so kind of what you're good at, what you can kind of monitor from what you're seeing and being like, oh, hey, like, this is a problem, but this isn't an issue. Like, maybe I can make one, then I can fix this, and then I can get a PR. So this is continued. This is how to find projects. So first timers only on GitHub. So this is kind of where I got my start. So it's pretty much this huge project directory where, as you can see right here on the side, you have a lot of frameworks and technologies from like .NET, C, C#, C++, Clojure, ClojureScript, CSS, etc., going all the way down. And super good place to kind of just go through and see kind of what's out there. And it's also kind of cool because you can kind of see like what's built with what. So super cool, kind of just seeing a lot of stuff like Hugo. It's like written in Go, and I thought that was super cool to being like, oh, that's pretty wild. So kind of just going through here and kind of seeing like how things are made is actually just pretty insane. And then a few more resources. So firsttimersonly.com. So that's going to lead you to a few pretty much project directories, but this first one is first contributions. That's pretty much kind of like a Git tutorial that is in essence of open source. So, teaches you how to like fork, how to make feature branches, stuff like that. Super cool. And then upforgrabs.net, goodfirstissues.com, and Code Triage. They're pretty much just project directories where you can just go through, type in your language or your technology of choice, and then just go with it. So finding problems. So the first one, a lot of people knock this one, but spell check and formatting and why it's important. So it's pretty important because you want to be consistent with like the style guide, README files, just stuff like that. And I like to say, think of it like a book. This is like professionally authored work, especially with bigger companies. It's like, I know like if I see a typo, like I'll screenshot it, or like, especially if it's like, like something big, like online, like if I see like a typo on Google or something, I'd be like, that's pretty funny. Then I'll just screenshot it. So this is definitely like, it's like a professionally bodied author of work for like the world to see. You want everything, to look consistent and professional, things like that. And product could break with a typo. So a lot of things that people might not think about. I remember this one time I was looking at this Go package and something was lowercase, and for your stuff to work at package level, or I guess if you want to use your modules in different packages, it has to be uppercase. And I was like, why isn't this working? Blah, 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 blah. And then I kind of look at the issues, and then it's just like, oh yeah, this needs to be uppercased. Sorry about that. And that was not really listed in the README. So typos are pretty big. So here's kind of one example right here. So here's just your hello world in Go. So as you can see right here, your code won't compile on the first one because print line is lowercase. And it looks small, but it's a big deal because, your code won't run. So as you can see right here, here's just the change, the print line. And then heading into your Git, you can kind of see this is kind of what it looks like whenever you make your changes. So, oh, hey, this is broken. And then you go to the green line like, oh, nice, it's fixed. So spell checking and formatting continued. So as you can see right here, I see this on a lot of things. 1 period, which grammatically, some things might only need 1 period, but as you can see right here, it's like I only put 1 period at the end of this unordered list. And as you can kind of see right here, looks kind of weird because I'm like, oh, hey, why is there just 1 period? And you can look over here in the changelog, over here in your Git file, you can see that I am fixing that up, adding periods where they need to be, and it's just right as rain. Here's kind of like an IRL situation about if you were to see this in the wild. So this is kind of some etiquette. So kind of just like, oh, hey, I did an enhancement. And then as you can see right here, describe the technical detail omitted in the task. I think that's just on their... I think that's just the statement for their thing. And then I put documentation, updating, and copywriting. And then right here, it says if you look at a few lines, it says describe here the tehek, whatever that is, detail omitted. Is that supposed to be technical? Supposed to be technical, could be a possible typo. And tests passed, and the PR has rose. Oops, that was a good meme though, hold up. So going through more stuff, we have testing and just confirmation. So this is pretty big because I know a lot of times, you always hear oh, it worked on my machine, or oh, it works on this. But kind of going through repos and going through issues and replicating the steps and kind of add your own steps to confirm that there really is an issue. So you can help by testing in a broad area, tech stacks, oh, hey, I tested this on Opera, Brave, on Pop! OS, or Manjaro. Or hey, this works on, Catalina, and I use Chrome. Stuff like that. You don't really have to dig into the code unless you really want to white box test and kind of play around with validation, test cases, stuff like that. And I spelled paradigms wrong. Oops. So kind of your 2 basic testing paradigms is white box, that's the internal code structure, so you have access to the code. And black box, that's kind of the behavior or the end user, no code access. So you are pretty much just testing. I know a lot of people do that for inputs or just things along those lines. And if no code is contributed, it could still result in the PR by just documenting your test input methods in a test error log. So a lot of times, if you're in Jira, you're gonna, make your bug ticket, stuff like that. You're probably gonna document it in a spreadsheet or something. And a lot of times that if they have a test log, error log, stuff like that, then you could make it in there, and then that could be pushed. So this pretty much explains testing. So as you can see here, it's your new date picker widget has crashed. That's impossible. I've tested it with negative numbers, special characters, null. What have you put in it? And then an actual date. So that's pretty much testing in a nutshell. We think about the tests more than we think about the actual end product. So here is kind of an open issue hey, the input isn't working on the login form. And then here's kind of a do on some good etiquette about how to approach things. Just be hey, I can confirm that the login was not working properly, and then you can just be hey, tested this on Mojave, Catalina, Windows 10, XP, browser, Google Chrome 85, and then your test inputs be hey, I did an empty string, key babel, pi, a long number, double, a negative float, or just a negative integer or whatever, and I tried HTML, and that did not work either. And then the next is a don't. So this is just hey, don't just be hey, this is broken. Just be implement something that's just like, hey, this is what I've done, or if it doesn't work, just be like, hey, this doesn't work, what can I do to, implement, or kind of just like, follow the breadcrumbs to kind of replicate this issue. So if you're really working on the code, like, hey, like on a white box type level, so this is kind of like a good etiquette thing to do. Like, hi, I tested and looked at the code. It looks like you used a double equal instead of a triple equal. After changing that testing, I am getting validation and moving forward to the next page. And as you can see here, it's like, oh, hey, did on the latest version of Catalina, tested on all the major browsers, and I tried the actual password that needed to go through to the next page, and things are good. So here's another one, kind of going before, like on the typo thing, technical writing and documentation improvement. So think of it as like the instruction manual for your project or the product. So you want the good docs. You don't really want things that look like an IKEA instruction manual. You want things to be kind of well written out, those kind of things. It's very important that things are up to date, cohesive, and describes the product perfectly. I know a lot of people, they're kind of against, like comments in production code. I know a lot of times people, they'll just have it in like the docs or maybe in a README kind of specifying like, oh, hey, like this is what this root does. This is where you find this file. This is, this does this, and those kind of things. So that's something good to keep in mind. So if you're kind of seeing some some like bleak READMEs or just like some code that could possibly use some more direction in the community, be like, hey, like what can I do to really spruce this code up, because it's kind of hard to read. So especially be on the lookout for typos, outdated dependencies, areas that could use more explaining, etc. So outdated dependencies is a really big one. So I know the really big one is like, especially for using Redis for Go, it's just like it's like back-end caching. I remember like 6 months ago I was able to just use it and do like an L push and all that to go to the database, but in Go you have to like go through context now, and that's like just like CTX as your variable. So a lot of times it's just like everything's just like changing so rapidly, and some docs aren't really up to date. And then a lot of times you'll see, like if you read a tutorial, you'll see in the comments people are just like, oh, hey, try this. Or if you're watching a YouTube video that was like, what if you're like watching a YouTube video that came out like 3 years ago, then usually just like sift through like the most recent comments, and then you might be able to find the answer for that. So sometimes you might not be able to do that for code. So definitely, if you can fix a typo, outdated dependencies, kind of areas that are just like kind of outdated, that's definitely a great thing to be fixing. And also video content, blog posts, and tutorials are, they're also awesome thing to add to docs, READMEs. So I know a lot of times, like in a README or like some docs, it'll be like, oh, hey, here's here's a whole bunch of tutorials, here's some videos, things like that. And I think my next slide is, I think that's at the end. So here's kind of like a structured README. So I kind of let people know like, hey, this uses several libraries outside of the standard library. So using, this command, go to your terminal, and then I broke down some of the external libraries. So Mux, that's pretty much for routing, sessions, and authorization. Redis, that's going to be our Redis client for our backend and our caching and our database. And bcrypt, that's just going to be for password hashing, salting, stuff like that. So kind of going through just like, oh, hey, make sure that, this is installed, this is how you run it, and then these are some of the commands. Because I know back in the day it used to just be Redis server, but now you have to do source Redis server. And then, so things change really quickly. So definitely if you see something wrong, hit up the README and definitely change that. And then as you can see here, like I kind of just listed like, oh, hey, this is where you can find everything. This is going to be like where the data model is. So here's our Redis client. And this is README. This isn't production code, because I know some people aren't necessarily into comments in production code. But as you can see here, this is kind of just like initialize, like, oh, hey, like these are all the roots. This is where you need to be at. This is how you initialize it. And then here's just the function that takes a pointer to our Monks router. So you know that, it's passing by reference, and there's no there's pass by reference. So pass by reference and not value. So yeah, this is what I was trying to say earlier. So pretty much like ways to contribute. This also helps you outside of open source. Definitely adding a GitHub star, tweet about it, review it on your Medium or personal blog, write a tutorial. So people love that a lot because especially with like the smaller things, a lot of the docs, a lot of the readmes, it's kind of barren, but people kind of just rough through it. So if it's something you use a lot, but it's kind of like underground, then definitely help out with docs, write tutorials, things like that. And that's definitely a great way to hop in and contribute. And also, monetary, you can just support people. Because some people, they work full-time jobs, or some people, they just do this out of labor of love, and then it kind of picks up, and then they're just like, oh, hey, maybe I can do this full-time, and then things like that happen. So definitely, monetary support, that helps out too. So this is kind of my hotbed. So accessibility and search engine optimization. So it's a great skill to have because, everybody uses the internet. The internet's for everybody. Everybody should be able to use a computer. Like a lot of people, they talk about like the myth of the minority user and all that. But in reality, it's just like, man, it just stinks that some people just don't care and they just make stuff and people can't navigate it with they can't navigate things by hitting tab, or they can't navigate it with only a mouse, and just a lot of sites, a lot of fluff, but they're just not really accessible. Like my vision's pretty bad a lot of times. Some sites, they have bad color contrast, so I kind of have to zoom in a little bit and those kind of things. So accessibility, that's an awesome skill to kind of learn, prep up for, and kind of use for your future projects because, people out there with disabilities and all that, they'd be really happy to be like, hey, I can use your product. I remember I was in the fitness industry before I was a software developer, and I remember we had this one patron. He was just like, he literally thanked us because we were like the only gym in Springfield that had like a handicap shower, and he just told everybody, and it's just like we were just getting so many signups off of him. So definitely, keeping everyone in mind is definitely like an awesome thing to do for your product. So some tools you can use to kind of go in, audit, kind of, test some sites. I would use like Axe, and Google Lighthouse. Those are free Chrome extensions you can use, and you can also access them in the developer tools. And then you can audit your sites for vulnerabilities, things like that. And then great things to look into, especially for beginners. This is kind of how I got my start, was look into images that need alt tags, especially if it's like not a decorative image. Like, hey, if it's like an important image, then definitely do that for alt tags. And that also helps SEO out a lot too. ARIA rules and labels. So I'll have a little demo in a second, but a lot of times, if you have a screen reader and you hit tab and it just says readme, it's like, what does readme mean? Because obviously, it's like if you have a vision impairment, you can't really see the image. So when you just, when you tab over it, it's just like, read more, or like join now. It's like, what am I reading? What am I joining? So that is super important. Site meta descriptions and broken links. So meta descriptions are big. So if you're an SEO person out there doing like meta descriptions, schemas, things like that, that's definitely a super cool thing you can help people out with, just because I know a lot of people, they're not necessarily like SEO writers, because, you have to have like X amount of words with X amount of keywords, stuff like that. So if you're good at, search engine optimization, that is an awesome thing to help people out with their metadata. And, like, especially if you can do like the JSON schemas for, or like the JSON schemas for search engine optimization, that's super awesome skill to have. And broken links. So obviously it's like, oh, hey, this link's broken, anything I can do to change this. And a lot of times they'll be like, yep, here you go, man. And then, they'll just give you the link, swap that, put it up, get a PR. Or also, if a link's broken, that's also a good opportunity for you to be like, hey, this is more of like an SEO thing, but it's just like, oh, hey, this link's broken. I have something that's similar to this. Any way to, swap these out. So good stuff from, especially if it's like a developer blog. Like if somebody wrote a blog article and say like they forgot to pay for hosting and their blog's just been down forever, and you have a developer blog and you're kind of just tabbing through, seeing what's up, and it's just like, oh, hey, I have a link. So that's another cool thing to do about broken links. So this is kind of big that I like to do, is it can get annoying, but testing a sites using a screen reader, and test sites by navigating with just a keyboard, using just a mouse, using tab, or just like I know some people, they right click and then they hit back, they right click, they hit forward. So kind of test those things out and just see what order it takes you and see where it takes you, things like that. And also this is big. This is definitely a labor of love, but it's definitely see if video or audio content needs transcribed for, people out there who are kind of, hearing impaired, kind of help them out, because, a lot of times, there's videos out there that are still informational. It's not just like, anything like music or something, and you can just go in and, transcribe that, and people, they can read it. So very awesome. Here's some main accessibility resources. So you have like W3C, that's like an HTML validator, and then you have Axe, you have Lighthouse, those are cool little auditing tools. You have ColorSafe, that kind of, you can type in your font, your color, your background color, your font size, and it'll tell you like, oh, hey, like these aren't compatible, the contrast is off, things like that. You have the Vox product, these are the Vox accessibility guidelines. This is just a super cool little checklist. You can just go through and be like, hey, it hits this, I'm missing this, oh, misses this. And you have WebAIM, a super cool place with lots of tutorials and just like best practices that you can use for web accessibility for your front end and stuff like that. So here's a Lighthouse audit. So as you can see right here, background and foreground colors do not have a sufficient contrast ratio. So a lot of times it's like if you're using like, if your background's white and your text is light gray and your font size is like 12, then people are probably going to have a hard time reading that. So I know a lot of times for me, I have to like, hit like, I got to zoom in like 10 times just to read some things, and definitely something to look out for. So heading elements are not in sequentially descending order. So obviously you want to go H1 to H6. If you like the size of an H2, then, just find the font size of that and just change the font size itself instead of just using an H2. Oh no. So this right here, so your HTML element does not have a lang attribute. So I know a lot of people, they, on bigger projects, they'll have like index.html.en, index.html.ru, index.html, like, FR for like France. So I know a lot of times people, they just leave their language attribute blank, and if there's multiple files, then, put your language in on the meta, and that would be a good thing to do on that. So names and labels. So this is kind of big. So image elements don't have an alt tags. So alt tags are super important, not only for SEO, but say like if your image doesn't load and, it'll show you like, hey, this is an image of X. And, if you are if you have to use a screen reader to navigate some things, you want people to kind of see like, oh, hey, this is a picture of X. So when they tab over it, it will read the alt tag. And links don't have a discernible name. So a lot of times, it's like README isn't really a good link. README isn't really a good link name. Like I know a lot of times one of my first bigger projects was just like, oh my goodness, how do we it's something about like, oh, the conversions are, really bad for our, for our sign up letter. And then it was just like a little, it was just like a link in a paragraph. It was just like, like join today. And it was just this really small little link. And I'm just like, they wanted to like rebuild everything. Like even like, the newsletter service, like, hey, how come, people aren't signing up? And then, the team was just like, how about we just like make a call to action and then just put like, for more information about our newsletter, click here. So, that's really tells you like what it is. It's like, oh, hey, so I'm getting information about this newsletter. This is super important, instead of just like click here or read me or read here. So I'll have a few examples of that coming up. So this is what ColorSafe looks like. So this is basically your kind of like a little color contrast sandbox. So you can set things up. So you can type in your text, you can type in your family, your background color, your font size, your weight, and whatever WCAG or WCAG, whatever you want to call it. I call it WCAG. Whatever WCAG standard you're trying to hit. And you can just generate a color palette, and it will show you kind of everything that will mix with your white background. So here's a little taste about alt text. So pretty much, alt text refers to the invisible description of images which are read aloud to blind users on a screen reader. Adding alt text allows authors to see images but still provide the content in an alternative text-based format. See the example below for what a screen reader experiences when no alt text is used. So because there's no alt tags, it's unusable, and when the images fails to display, and then you can see right here, like, then it's just a fictional company. So with no alt tags, it's kind of rough. So I'm gonna play kind of like, just kind of give you guys a taste about like what kind of goes in when using a screen reader. So as you can see here, I have just a read more link, and then I have another link with an ARIA role, and we have an ARIA label, and yeah, you will hear that. Let's, oh my goodness, everything's so small. Sorry if this is loud.
VoiceOver on Chrome, document, Google Chrome window,
So here's the
Untitled
first
presentation,
link.
Google Slides, tab, link, read more. Link. For more information about our referral program, perks, and guidelines, click here. You are currently VoiceOver off.
So that's kind of a taste into what really goes in, and I know sometimes, let's see here, hold up. So I know some people, you want to have a, like I said, read more isn't really too good, so you can just be like, cool, now that's saved. And then kind of going through.
VoiceOver on Chrome, visited, link, read more, visited, link. For more information about our referral program, perks, and guidelines, click here. You are currently on a link, VoiceOver off.
So yeah, that's kind of like what a screen reader scenario and kind of working with ARIA labels and roles would look. So here's another one. Your document doesn't have a meta description. So kind of going over here, you can kind of see this is what your meta description looks like. And in the code, that's going to be in your head, and that's just going to be, your meta name is your description, and then the content will be your meta description. So that's just going to be like a keyword-rich paragraph that kind of displays and kind of just tells you about what the product is, what the website is, and kind of helps out for Google, Bing, stuff like that to kind of hit you and give you your rankings. This is kind of blurry, but this is what a schema looks like. So for the SEO people out there, this is a JSON schema. So I know a lot of times, like going into the code, like I know this is super big, especially for like smaller people. Or smaller repos, small. They don't really have a marketing team, so a lot of times they can't really do like canonical links. They can't do like their schemas. They don't have people who are doing like keyword-rich content. So a lot of times, kind of going in and seeing if they need schema work done. This is just what a schema looks like. So if you are a SEO person, this is definitely something you can help out with. And there's a lot more stuff you can do too. So you can do feature requests. So that's just like, hey, I'd like to see this. So this is in a community. So if you're on like a GitHub issue, just being like, hey, I'd like to see this. I'd like to see X, Y, Z. I think this would be really cool. Or just like, hey, I did an accessibility audit, and the designs, the contrast isn't really too good. Like, is there anything that we can do in the future to kind of implement some things? So definitely a way to kind of get your, to get your word out and let people know that, hey, definitely if there's any future changes, I think this would be cool. Project management and assistance. So especially probably if you're in a more tight-knit community and, like I said, people have full-time jobs, people have families. If people need somebody to, maybe like run Jira, do tickets, stuff like that, be in charge of sprints, kind of make sure people are, doing their things, kind of ask and be like, oh, hey, like, you can kind of go in and be like, hey, like, pretty organized person. I think it'd be cool, if I can, like, be in charge of sprints, check up on developers, like, make the Trello boards, things like that, because I know a lot of people would appreciate that, because a lot of things, it's a lot of moderation, especially in the issues tab. You have like 20 people like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. Then you have somebody working on it, and then somebody's like, oh, hey, I want to do this. And then the admin's like, okay, here you go. But then someone's like, oh, hey, no, I'm working on this. So definitely, PM, pretty cool thing that you can do for some open source contributing. Closed captioning videos, like I said before. So when you close caption a video, you can do it through HTML or just like basic transcribing. And I think YouTube has like a transcribing service too that you can just go into the dashboard and just type your own videos. But definitely on an accessibility level, that does help out a lot. And this one's super cool, but it's kind of weird. It's drawing area, and what that means is like a lot of, especially a lot of like AI startups, a lot of them, they'll be like, oh, hey, if you have Paint or GIMP or like Illustrator or Photoshop, then draw the road yellow and draw the car green. So I know like Comma AI does a lot of that. So if you want to get involved, don't really have a lot of coding skills, but just don't want to get involved and you want to help, the future of self-driving cars, that's super cool to do. So yeah, they'll have lots of stuff like that, or just like draw, or like, draw the, the stop sign yellow and traffic lights green, and the road blue and the cars purple, stuff like that. And the list goes on. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can really do to kind of hone your skills, learn, really just sharpen the tools, and really just go out in the world and just code like a madman, or whatever your technical skill set is, to really just go in and hit. So you found a project and you're just thinking, hey, what's next? So kind of going in, you want to find a repo you like, you fork it, you're going to want to clone it onto your machine, you're going to want to code, commit, push, compare your branches, and submit a pull request. So here's the TLDR version. So you'll see on a repo there'll be a fork that over. Then number 2, this is kind of where you're going to do your clones and stuff. So like I said, if it's super small, like if you're just like, like maybe doing a typo fix, or if it's just something extremely tiny that doesn't need a build or test, you can just edit it in the, just like the raw GitHub, or just like the raw file on GitHub. But this is kind of where you go to clone, so you can do HTTPS or SSH, your preferred method. And then obviously, you're coding, blah, 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 blah. And then you're going to, commit and push. And then you can see right here that your branch is going to be 1 commit ahead. And then you can go through right here and you are able to merge. So as you can see right here, like, oh, sweet, I'm able to merge. So then you can create your pull request, and then kind of going through, it's going to do like their little build tests and just like whatever they do for, kind of just whatever they do to make sure the code's good and clean. And then once all your tests have passed and things are going good, and builds are good, code looks good, tests have passed, nothing's too sloppy, there's like readability, code reviews, then you'll get a nice little email saying like, hey, this has been merged into master. So there's your first PR, and it's an incredible feeling. So I will leave a link to this. It's kind of just like a full thing, but I kind of just wanted to show you kind of like a Git hierarchy. So you use Git a lot whenever you're doing open source. So this is kind of just a little visual representation of just like kind of what's going on. So, you have like creating, you have browsing, and then all your changes, and then reverting. So, going back, all your updates, your branches, your committing, and then, you're publishing, your deploying, stuff like that. So here's that. And yeah, that's what I got. So yeah, I guess if there are any questions, I don't know if I can see the people in Slack. So, or not Slack, I don't know if I can see the people on Twitch, but if you have any questions, then sweet, cool. And if there's any IRL questions, and if not, then thanks for pulling up. Thanks for coming through.
There is a question. Do you have a method for filtering projects to contribute to? And then he says the environment setup process is too complicated. Tasks, no pull requests have been merged in the last month, pass, etc.
Gotcha. So kind of what I do is, I hate to sound like the unsolicited person, but a lot of the times, like, I kind of go in and I do a lot of accessibility and SEO, so that's really not like, people don't really like look at that or like there's not really a lot of like issues like pulled in on there. But I guess if I were to like fix a bug or something, or do something a little more technical, because I know a lot of times it's like I've done some stuff for like Mattermost, and it's like, oh cool, I literally changed one line of code, but getting my environment set up and my testing set up legitimately took like 3 hours, and I was just like, is this even worth it? So I guess for that, see if there's like a community, because I know a lot of times people, they're gonna have like a dedicated Discord or like a forum or anything like that, and if they do, find out like a moderator, find out an admin, find out the main maintainer, see what they can help you with, because I know a lot of times, sometimes if things aren't working out, they might have to give you some like .env files. So a lot of times it's just like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this compiling? Blah, blah, blah. Like my server isn't running. Oh, because, I need like the .env files, or just some really weird hyper niche things that you probably have to just maybe stack. But kind of a way that I like to use to filter things out is, especially when you go on some of the resources that I sent out, there's something called like, first timers only, and like awesome open source and all those kind of things. You can kind of go in there, and then when you click on a project, they're kind of already pre-filtered by like either beginner, first timers only, good first project, hard, bug fix, enhancement, things like that. So things are pretty well sifted out, and then kind of just go through and click on that and see what's up. And a lot of the times what I like to do is, because like I'm still pretty junior level myself, and I kind of just go in and I'm just like, I go to the Discord, or I'll go in the issues page and be like, hey, like I don't really have a lot of experience, what can I help with? And a lot of times I'll just throw something at me that might not be in the issues, or something that is in the issues, but they'll be like, oh, hey, here's this, we'll teach you how to set up your your dev environment, and we can throw you some env files, and if you have any questions, we can help you, support you, like just let us know, and we can give you a hand on whatever you need to do. Are there any other questions? This is probably really early. Oh, wow, yeah, 30 minutes.
Is this your main thing? What's your, do you monetize this very often?
Oh, no monetization. It's pretty much just a labor of love. Because like I said, I'm pretty new in the game, and I didn't go to college, so a lot of times it's kind of hard to get work experience. So I kind of have to make my own experience, and kind of just finding out open source, it's definitely a good way to learn, because a lot of times, like I said, it's like you're doing toy projects, side projects, and they're pretty controlled, because it's like you pretty much have the power to do everything you want. If you get mad, just like dump it, or like you can pivot really easy. But whenever you're doing like open source, it's like this is somebody else's project. Like you kind of have to pull through with it. So say like, oh hey, like I'm working on my own project. My nav bar isn't working with Flexbox. This is dumb. I'm probably just gonna dump that and just maybe add like a side nav and just make it like an unordered list, put it in the top corner, and then go from there. So you really can't do that in open source. So definitely, I guess it's just kind of like learning the hard way and making my own experience. So no monetization, pretty much just doing it to learn and for labor of love, and to help out other people. So super cool way to get into it. Are there any other questions? This is an early one, so I guess if you wanted to catch the cross promotion, if you wanted to catch the last 30 minutes of the Unity one, then you can hop on. Sweet.
Are you done?
I'm done. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I guess the reason I asked that, I was looking at your